Rian had always believed that a quiet life on the human frontier would be enough for him. Yet fate had a different plan for his path when the starships of the Azure Court arrived above the mining world where he worked, changing the rhythm of his days into something far grander than he ever expected. The Azure Court was known throughout many systems as a realm of dignity and order, ruled by Queen Mara, whose wisdom kept countless species in harmony, and her daughter Princess Lyra was known for her insight and bravery. Although her curiosity sometimes brought her into danger, Rian had only seen the princess once before the day everything changed, and even then he had observed her only from a respectful distance as she addressed the workers about improved cooperation between the court and human settlers. He remembered how calm she looked as she spoke with steady energy, and though he forgot many things in his life, he never forgot how she carried herself, like someone who had been raised not to dominate, but to protect. The tragedy began when a rogue faction of raiders, emboldened by the belief that the court had grown too peaceful, launched an attack along the outer colonies. And during a diplomatic survey, the raiders struck the princess's vessel, tearing through the escort crafts before they realized their target held someone of such value. Chaos swept the sky as alarms sounded and pieces of metal burned through the thin atmosphere of the mining world. And Rian heard the thunder before he saw the falling ship streaking across the clouds in a trail of smoke. His co-workers ran for safety since the debris threatened to crash near the mining stations. Yet Rian felt something inside him insist that he could not run, that if anyone had survived inside that burning vessel, they would need help before the raiders returned to finish what they started. He sprinted across the rough terrain as the wreck slammed into the ground several ridges away, and heat washed over him as he pushed deeper into the smoke-filled crater where the remains of the vessel lay broken. The craft was twisted, panels torn, cables dangling like severed tendrils, and fires licked along the ruined hull. But Rian forced his way through because a faint voice echoed from inside the shattered interior. When he pushed open a bent panel, he found Princess Lyra trapped beneath a fallen beam, her silver armor cracked, her breathing shallow yet determined as she tried to free herself, though her strength was fading. Rian lifted the beam with every bit of force he could gather, and while his muscles trembled, he managed to shift the weight enough for her to crawl out, and she collapsed against him in exhaustion, though her eyes remained sharp. She told him that the raiders would track the ship and return soon, and he understood that survival meant leaving the crater immediately. So he carried her across the rocky landscape toward the mining shelters. The raiders were already descending from the sky as Rian lowered the princess behind a wall of machinery near the freight lifts, and he grabbed an old impact tool from the station supplies, since it was the only thing close to a weapon he could find. Princess Lyra tried to stand, insisting she could fight, but Rian urged her to stay down because she was wounded, and her duty now was to survive rather than to confront enemies in her state. The raiders landed in two groups, armored figures scanning the ground as they moved with confident precision. But they did not expect a lone human to rush at them with desperate courage and swing an improvised tool with the strength of someone who refused to yield. He fought with reckless resolve, using every advantage of terrain he could, ducking under blaster fire and striking hard enough to disrupt their formation. And though he knew he might fall, he also knew that if he faltered even once, the princess would be taken. The battle dragged on near the old loading cranes, where sparks burst every time the enemy's weapons struck metal, and Rian's arms felt like lead as he fought three attackers at once. Princess Lyra, though injured, managed to seize a fallen raider's sidearm and provided what aid she could by firing precise shots whenever she caught an opening. But the raiders were relentless. It was only when court reinforcements arrived, drawn by the distress beacon that activated during the crash, that the fight turned, and the raiders retreated toward their ships under heavy pressure from the arriving guards. Rian lifted the princess once more as the guards descended, and she told them that he had saved her life, that without him she would not have survived long enough for rescue. She remained conscious, but weak as medics carried her into the transport, and Rian stood aside, wondering if that was the end of his involvement, believing he would return to his simple life once the court left. However, when the reinforcements discovered that one of the raider groups had set a hidden explosive device beneath the mining station's support shafts, they ordered an evacuation. And while others fled, Rian returned inside because he knew a team of miners had been trapped by the damage. He raced through the collapsing corridors, ignoring the distant warnings of the guards outside, and guided the trapped workers through the emergency tunnels, which had nearly caved in, carrying one man whose leg was injured while calming the others so they could move in an organized line. The station shook as the explosive device triggered prematurely, sending dust and fragments into the air, but the tunnel remained intact long enough for them to escape, and Rian was the last to exit before the supports fell behind him. The corp guards witnessed all of this and carried reports straight back to the Queen, who was already at the main citadel receiving medical updates on her daughter. Queen Mara requested that Rian be brought before her so she could understand why a human laborer had risked his life twice in one cycle, first for her daughter and then for the miners who were not even his kin. When he arrived at the royal citadel, he felt out of place among the glass columns and violet banners that adorned the halls. Yet he remained composed because he had done nothing that did not feel necessary. He was escorted into the grand chamber where Queen Mara waited, with Princess Lyra beside her. The princess now awake and supported by a medical brace, but eager to hear what would happen next. Queen Mara asked Rian to recount everything, and he spoke with steady clarity, explaining that he acted because he could not ignore someone in danger, no matter the species or rank. She listened without interruption, and Princess Lyra watched him with an expression that blended gratitude with quiet admiration, as though she found something remarkable in his unbroken calm. When he finished, Queen Mara stood and declared that the court owed him more than simple thanks, that his courage revealed rare character, and for that reason she issued an order that shocked every guard in the hall. She proclaimed that Rian must remain within the Azure Court, not as a prisoner, but as an honored guardian assigned directly to the princess, since she believed that anyone willing to risk everything for someone he barely knew possessed the kind of loyalty that could not be trained. Rian stood stunned, uncertain whether he should accept, because his life on the frontier had been modest and stable, and the idea of living among the court felt overwhelming. Princess Lyra stepped forward and told him that the choice was his, but she hoped he would stay because she trusted him more than she trusted many who had trained beside her since childhood. He hesitated for a long moment, considering the life he knew versus the life he had never imagined, and he realized that the frontier held nothing he needed to return to, while the court offered not comfort but purpose. So he accepted the Queen's order, bowing formally, even though he felt awkward doing so, and the hall filled with murmurs as the guards acknowledged that a new guardian had joined their ranks in the most unexpected way. Weeks passed as Rian adjusted to his new responsibilities, training with the court's defense units and learning their customs, while Princess Lyra regained her health and resumed her duties under his watchful presence. He accompanied her on diplomatic visits, scientific surveys, and cultural ceremonies, and though he tried to remain in the background, she often sought his perspective because she believed humans saw things others overlooked. The guards eventually grew accustomed to his presence, respecting him not for his origin, but for his willingness to learn and his clear sense of responsibility. During one mission to a distant moon where a rebel cell threatened the region's stability, Rian once again demonstrated his worth when he uncovered an ambush hidden within a network of caverns. Princess Lyra trusted his instincts and adjusted her strategy accordingly, preventing what could have been a disastrous loss. and Queen Mara acknowledged that placing him at Lyra's side had been the correct decision. Over time, Rien became known throughout the court not as an outsider, but as a symbol of the surprising strength humans carried, a strength defined not by physical power alone, but by the enduring will to protect. His bond with Princess Lyra deepened as they faced more challenges together, and though neither spoke openly about the trust that grew between them, every moment of cooperation strengthened their connection. Queen Mara watched their partnership with approval, believing that the princes had found not merely a guardian, but someone who balanced her boldness with grounded clarity. One evening, as the sun of the Azure Court's homeworld lowered across the horizon, casting golden light through the citadel's crystal walls, Princess Lyra approached Rien on the observation terrace where he often stood.